Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. Now that my two obligatory informative videos are done for the day, it's time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. And some of my subscribers have awared me that Jeff Nippard has made a video about bear mode. So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. And I think Jeff and I have had some interesting back and forth down in the comments. Let's be honest here, guys. I like to pick on Jeff a little bit. I like to pick on him because I like to clown people in general, but I don't actually dislike the guy. There's a lot of people in this industry who I genuinely dislike. There's a lot of people I genuinely dislike. I mean, and that would include one of the other targets of this video, Strap on Destiny. I genuinely dislike him as a person, just based upon experiences I have. But I don't dislike Jeff. I don't think Jeff is really one of the bad guys in the industry. There are a lot of them, the majority. Let's be honest here. A lot of you guys are going to say, man, but I'm fans of this guy or that. Doesn't mean they're not a piece of shit. I mean, this industry is by and large filled with con men, narcissists, sociopaths. That's the norm in the current fitness industry. That is what it is. People need to realize that. I don't necessarily think Jeff falls into those categories per se. Again, I don't like the fact that he might pimp some supplements. And that, for me, is, again, kind of a big one. I don't think he pushes it that hard to the point to where I really need to just dog him about it. But I do like to pick on him, and here's where I'm going to pick on him a little bit. Now, why do you bodybuilders always want to use all these references from another subculture? Again, it kind of highlights the underlying thing behind the bodybuilding world, bear mode. I mean, do you know where the term bear, do you not know the origin of that? Come on, guys, don't use the bear mode. And in all honesty, I think this is a case of Jeff maybe getting led astray, maybe trying to cash in a little bit on Strap-on's popularity. But let's be honest here, Jeff. You jumped up and you did kind of a dirty bulk. You incorporated a bunch of Alex's silly-ass training ideas. But here's the thing. Why would an evidence-based guy like you, who does have an actual background, enough of a background in exercise science, to know that Alex is mostly full of shit on what he promotes, right? Everyone else in the industry knows that. All the coaches laugh at him. You've had people on your channel who would say the stuff that he promotes is bad. Like, you interview people regularly who denounce his nonsense. I mean, look at what Dr. Mike has said in discussions and debates on your channel. Look at what Dr. Mike Israel has said about things like above-the-knee rack pulls. Has said about neck training, right? Go look at what he says. I mean, wouldn't you agree that he's an expert you should probably be listening to? Meaning, and I hate to appeal to authority, but if you were going to listen to two people when it comes to training, if you had to pick between Alpha Destiny, Beta Destiny, Manlet Destiny, aka Grimly the Dwarf, if you had to pick between him and Dr. Mike Israel for training advice, given both of their overall accolades and knowledge, which one would, if there was a point of contention between the two, which one would you be more inclined to listen to? It would be Dr. Mike. It would be Dr. Mike. If you had to pick, because I'm not saying they don't both get stuff right and wrong, but when you have someone like Dr. Mike who calls Strap-on's nonsense complete bullshit, he's just a kid. He's a child. He is a child. And in fact, most of his original ideas he got from my channel. He was one of my biggest nut huggers before he got into all his own bastardized versions of West Side and all this, whatever he calls it, trap lord training, all yokes training. Let's be realistic here. Let's be realistic. Why would you listen to him? Why would you, someone who clearly has more knowledge of training, interviews people who destroy him in terms of training knowledge. You interview him all the time, and they actually specifically shoot down things that he promotes. Well, why would you go listen to him? Why would you consider him a source of information? I don't get it. He really doesn't know what he's doing. He's a child. He's a child. He's like 22. Very, very rare is the 22-year-old who has an extensive knowledge of training. Let's be realistic here. So you cashed in on it and you're doing some of his nonsense, and then you find you weren't happy with the results. You weren't happy with the results. What did you expect? I guess here's the point that when it comes to the dirty bulking thing and everything else, you're right. He is right. Guys who carry more body fat, we're going to look bigger in a shirt. We may not look as big when we're just chilling, sitting down, But, you know, you put them next to someone with a similar amount of muscle. You take the guy who's bulked up bigger. You take a guy who's 10% body fat versus a guy who's 17, 18% body fat with the same amount of muscle mass in a shirt, in a t-shirt. Side by side, which one's going to look like they have more muscle? The guy with the more body fat. That's true. Whereas in guys who are ripped look bigger with their shirt off. And in fact, that is the norm. You see a lot of guys in the whole natural bodybuilding scene who, when they're cut, they look tiny. You see them in a shirt, I wouldn't think they lift other than you see a few veins. They look tiny. There's no thickness. There's no size. Especially once that fat is gone because they don't have that much muscle. It's an illusion. It's an illusion due to the leanness. And I agree with that. But the point we need to make here, we need to not look at for YouTube fitness. I wouldn't look at competitive bodybuilders. And I know a lot of Jeff's stuff when it comes to the bulking and cutting he brought up has to do with competitive bodybuilders, even natural ones. But you can't build an audience off that. In other words, if your target audience is competitive bodybuilders, you are not going to have a big channel. You're going to have a bunch of people who come in who might look to bodybuilders for advice, but they are not themselves bodybuilders. They don't have to worry about the things that bodybuilders have to worry about, right? Therefore, that really isn't your target audience. It's not competitive bodybuilders. A competitive bodybuilder might just use what they know because maybe people will want some secrets and some tips to help them reach some of their goals. But there aren't enough competitive bodybuilders for you to make a living off of making a YouTube channel catering to them. There just aren't enough of them. So realistically, we are still preaching to the layman. You know, even though I might be a powerlifter, I understand the majority of my followers are not going to be powerlifters. I get that. For the layman, I don't think this is a bad idea because the layman doesn't have to worry about contest prep. Is it a good idea? And this is the point I'm going to come to. And this is a valid point that you need to remember. Should the average layman who says, I want to get as big as possible, even if they want to be lean later, should they at some point after becoming an intermediate bulk up to 18, 19, 20% body fat? I'm going to say yes, they should. That doesn't mean that you bulk fast. I'm not saying you do necessarily what Jeff did to where he let his body fat get too out of control. But what I mean is they're not going to step on a bodybuilding stage. They don't need to be beach ready year round. If someone honestly says, hey, look, I want to maximize my drug-free potential, I'm going to tell them they probably at some point after becoming an intermediate lifter, even if they're walking around at 13, 12% body fat right now, they probably should at some point do a year long or a year and a half long bulk and slowly work their way up to 19, 20% body fat. Why? It has to do with muscle memory. It has to do with the fact that if you want to surpass or even reach close to your natural limits, you are going to have to gain some fat at some point. And here's the point I'm going to discuss. He said, well, you know, in my experience, the guys who cut too fast, they lose all that muscle. Yes, they do. Why are you cutting fast? I mean, a lot of people are giving me a hard time about my slow cut, right? I was at 255 at this point last year. I'm down to 215 now. People are like, damn, like 9, 10 months to cut 40 pounds. That's insanely so. What do you mean you're going to take another 6 months or 8 months to cut another 20? Exactly. Because Jeff is right. If you cut fast, you lose the muscle. But if you bulk up slow, you maximize your performance, you maximize your leverages, you maximize your muscle gain because you get as strong as possible over a year and a half. And then you slowly cut down, even if it takes you a year to cut down, you're going to keep almost all that muscle. And the little bit you lose, you can stop your diet at certain points and probably rebound it off of muscle memory. That is the take home here, because once you've obtained those changes and you've made those changes at the slightly higher body fat, they will become semi-permanent. It will allow you to then slow cut later and be bigger than your frame might have otherwise allowed you to be. And I think there is something valid to that. But does that mean that you need to bulk to 20% body fat in 10 weeks? Probably not. And I'll give you guys a perfect example of someone who incorporated this. Look at Devin Palumbo, right? Beast Aesthetics. It's my bro, Devin. I chat with him all the time. He's a good dude. I've known him for years. Everyone always screams about he's got to be a fake natty. Look at his aesthetics, all this stuff, right? A bunch of people always joke. I've heard some people call him a Nordic demigod. Devin Palumbo, he did an 18-month bulk just a couple years back. He did an 18-month bulk a couple years back. He worked on all his power lifts, his squat, his bench, his deadlift. He worked on his strict press. He got his strict press up to 220, by the way. He got his clean and jerk up to 300 pounds. Not even close to Olympic form, right? He did this whole bulk, 18 months long. Now, keep in mind, you're talking about a natty with over a decade of training experience. He's been training since he was 13. He went ahead and he bulked up. He bulked up to like 220 plus. Then he did a cut all the way down into the 170s. Got peeled, went ahead and did his whole bodybuilding gig again, even though he'd been training like a strength athlete. He's the biggest he's ever been. He managed to, after someone with in excess of a decade, he's probably been an advanced lifter for 7 or 8 years. He went ahead and he did a nice, slow, steady bulk, lost his abs, got fatter, got the biggest and strongest he's ever been, then he cuts down. He's now bigger than he was several years ago when he was already an advanced lifter. It works. It works really well. I mean, go check out his results for people who are curious about it. So I don't think this is necessarily a problem as far as the bulk goes, but I would agree, Jeff, you do need to moderate it. And it needs to all be done slowly. Your bulks need to be slow, and your cuts need to be slow if you're actually trying to get the most out of this. But I wouldn't listen to Strap-On Destiny. I really wouldn't. I don't know why you thought that was a good idea. I really don't. To listen to him at all. All right, guys, so that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.